And I'm surprised that they gave you black and white photocopies. I gave colored photographs.
Yeah, you did, yes. And the color swatches are in the file down at Building Safety Division. And the windows, the manufacturer of the new windows, which are 20 in all, will be either wood or aluminum clad on the exterior.
No, they're not going to be aluminum.
Okay.
Yeah, they're.
We're
they're
putting
wood.
that into.
Oh, I see.
So.
Yeah.
Can I clarify one thing? I thought there were two fixed sash.
The other one is on the other elevation that is not visible from the street.
Okay, all right. So you don't
You
have
can do
to-
whatever you want.
Okay, thank you.
Based on the preceding findings of fact, I move that our commission grant a preservation notice of action to the owner at 122 St. James, approving the proposal as presented to our commission on this day, October 4th, 2018. Such notice to be subject to the conditions contained in the previous motion.
Do I have a second? No. All right, all those in favor? Aye. No opposition, unanimous. Thank you
very much.
kindly.
Thank you a lot. And thanks for all your good advice.
And good luck.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yay, and thank you for
We're
the
gonna get
improvements.
this done.
This is going to be gorgeous.
So who seconded that?
Bye.
That would be Alan.
See you soon. Take care.
All right, am I right? Next is 153 Fair?
They're not here.
Okay.
So I will reach out to them and find out what happened and see if they can come to the next meeting.
That would be a kindness, or we will leave this open as old business. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Do we know who those two folk are?
I'd like to sign that copy since she sketched in that one correction. Thank you.
So that takes us to our final item of the evening, and that's discussion of the ordinance. So this, we have, for months, this commission has discussed the idea of updating our existing preservation ordinance to be more in line with the model law of 2014 that was put together by the state. And that law we found is more comprehensible than our existing ordinance, which is structurally, hold on, let me pull up the notes so I can read. That is, the way it's organized is a little confusing, the current existing chapter for architectural and architectural design and historic districts, chapter 264 is a little bit redundant because all the criteria, procedures that are included in reviewing those districts are also included in our chapter, preservation chapter 405-64. So it'd be nice to eliminate chapter 264 and have that be part of, which is our general historic preservation ordinance, have a stronger structure that states what our legislative intent is up front, and not buried underneath the designation procedures. Also a clearer outline of what our general and administrative duties are as a commission. This new ordinance, you use clearer phrasing and terminology to explain the criteria for our designations, our application review, our affirmative maintenance, our declaration of hardship, and enforcement. And it would also, what this new ordinance would do is codify some of the requirements of the CLG, which certified local government, which stipulates mandatory annual training, reporting, maintaining an inventory, and other duties in order for us to be a certified local government. This ordinance also proposes administrative changes, many of which were proposed by the Corporation Council and the proposed legislation that was presented to the Laws and Rules Committee earlier this year. That includes the stipulations for alternate members, removal of members for cause, cost of operation clarification. It also proposes to lengthen the approvals that we grant for applications to 24 months, which currently is 12 months, and also stipulates the ZBA at the appeal body. Right now, it just says Article 78. The ordinance also proposes new tools and measures. And let me preface this by saying, this is the first draft. We're introducing it tonight to begin a discussion of these, conversation. Nothing is set in stone. All of these tools, I can say, are either in the model law or they're in other preservation ordinances in New York, Rochester, Buffalo, Saratoga Springs, Syracuse. None of what's proposed is new or novel. So that said, the new tools would broaden the definition of what is considered a historic resource in this community. It would include something that may yield important information to prehistory, a property that might have achieved significance within the last 50 years. And let me say that it has to be extraordinary significance for typically the National Park Service, the building must be at least 50 years old to be considered historic. And this would allow buildings of the recent past that might be considered if there's some outstanding significance to it. Also, we are proposing interior landmarks. They must be publicly accessible. They cannot be private residences or buildings that the public cannot get to. And finally, the Teaneck Landmarks as a proposed resource worthy of protection. We currently don't have a clause for protecting scenic landmarks. Examples of that might be Company Hill Path, Hofstra Park. It could be a tree that's incredibly old, scenic views of the community that's worthy of protection. This ordinance also acknowledges that some sites might have archaeological evidence that's worthy of documentation and recording, so that may yield important information about our past. So that gives us an ability to acknowledge that, let's address this site that might, let's say it's in the Stockade district. Anyway, it's a tool for us to stipulate some sort of documentation of that evidence. And then something that we haven't discussed before, but with the idea of establishing an inventory of eligible landmarks. So it's a way for us to acknowledge that while we don't have the means to get around to designating everything immediately before they might be threatened, this is a way of registering with the city government, with the clerk. These buildings we feel eligible for landmark designation. We cannot, we don't have the means, the staff, the resources to move with a full designation at this time, but we want it to be recognized that these are important resources as well. Obviously, all of this would need to be discussed with the Corporation Counsel's office, and it would also, with any legislation in this community, go before Commons Council. This is just a first step of saying, hey, we really studied this idea of preservation ordinances and how to improve our own, and this is what we propose. With that said, I have drafts of the ordinance, only 3 copies. I can only print so much on my own printer. I will share them with the commission, but I would also like to walk through some of the changes. I have a draft for Dan to review as well.
Is it different from the one you last sent? Is it different from the one that you last sent?
This is the one I shared via email yesterday. So just to give the commission a head start on reading it. So
Can I just ask, so this is like what we've all been working on and then you drafted this, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I drafted this using the 2014 model law, and I also consulted with the Preservation League of New York State, with members of SHPO, and with other preservation directors in other municipalities.
I noticed that some of what is in there, I spoke with someone in Schenectady, and it tracks what they do pretty closely as well.
I'm just going to I have a little presentation just to make it easier to walk through, each at any time.
Do you have a hard copy?
Yes, I do.
I could follow along because I'm used to black and white. Thanks. you've got it?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
So, as I said before, this ordinance would eliminate chapter 264, historic and architectural design districts. I'm not quite sure of the provenance of this article. It's not part of zoning, it's separate from zoning. It's confusing to applicants. It only applies to the Stockade district. It doesn't,
Yeah, I believe that the difference here is historical, if I recall correctly. This is the one that came first. And,
okay.
this is a time that I really wish Ed Ford were here because he could explain this way better than I can.
So the review criteria for applications in the Stockade is the same as that of other historic districts. The only difference, one is that it notes that no buildings in the Stockade shall exceed the height of the base of the old Dutch church. That's been preserved in the drafted ordinance. I can point that out. That hasn't gone away. And it also, there's an odd part that talks about the underlining zoning district shall not apply to this Stockade. But then in the chapter 4 or 5, for all historic districts, it says that the underlining zoning district shall apply. So it's conflicting.
Right, and since the late 405 came later, it is controlled.
Okay.
Even though the contradictory language is still carried forward in the code.
But
That is a common problem of our city code.
264 is the one that we were looking at a couple of months ago that had given us more power, right?
This is no new power, it just clarifies what our,
But that one was the one that had like the power where hours we get to make decisions.
when
that
it's
are-
more restrictive,
Right.
yes. And I will get to that. Also, the headings, you cannot go, with the existing ordinance and the proposed draft, you cannot go heading to heading. The headings are a little different. Some sections are broken down a little to be more specific, so it's clear to search the ordinance. I'm not going to go through. All I can say is that it's hard to see and understand from where you want to go. So the existing ordinance has just this many headings. The new ordinance has clearly a lot more headings. I'm sorry. I can also share this. Commission membership, as proposed and recommended by the Corporation Council, it's recommended that we have 3 alternate members. It also establishes grounds for the mayor to remove a member for cause, which currently there is, as we experienced a year ago, 2 years ago, that was hard to do because there was nothing, no stipulation in the ordinance how to remove somebody that either has a lot of absences or ethics violations. So this addresses that issue. It also stipulates mandatory annual commission training that's required by CLG, going back to the idea of codifying the requirements of CLG within our own ordinance. Also, the 3 alternate members, just one note, would need to have the same requirements of a regular member. So they need to be a City of Kingston resident, they need to have a vested interest in historic preservation and curiosity about.
And they'll also have to do
History.
the training.
And training, yes, and that's noted in the draft. This new ordinance stipulates the recording and structure of decisions by our commission, and that information used in formulating this decision shall be made a matter of public record. So all the information that we use when we make, whether it's designation criteria or reviewing application, needs to become part of the public record. It's just making that we strive to do that already, but this makes it official. And it also mandates the submission of an annual report to the mayor and the common council, which we're currently required to submit an annual report to SHPO as part of the COG requirement. We absolutely should be submitting it to our own administrative bodies.
Do alternates, all 3, need to be at every meeting?
Annual report.
Do alternates need to be
The
at every
alternates
meeting? Or
is,
just if the
would be
members have
when
some?
one of us has to recuse ourselves, and that's, we have the agenda, so we know in advance and when there's an application that we cannot act on, or we have no, we're going to be absent altogether.
It would also be helpful if volunteers, if alternates were willing to volunteer to come to the meetings. I mean, that's a mentorship in a way to learn when we cycle out of our term, someone is sort of understudying the thing. So maybe we can't require that, but we might want to recommend it.
The way alternates generally function on boards is that they participate in all deliberations at all meetings, just like any other member of the board. They just don't vote, unless there is a recusal. So they attend every meeting, they participate in all of the discussions. They are a member just like anybody else, they just don't vote.
It's even better.
Thank you.
That's
Budget
it.
request. This was recommended by the Corporation Council, and this would stipulate that funds shall be made available to us by the Common Council. Powers and duties. So for this, I've never heard of a preservation notice of action, so this ordinance would draw up preservation notice of action and for the more widely used term certificate of appropriateness. And until recently, preservation notice of action wasn't even used.
Yeah, it's an odd construct,
Yeah.
but it's an approval by any other name.
So it also, this is a change that's recommended by the model law of 2014, and adds stipulation that a historic district is not to be construed as a zoning district, and that the commission is not authorized to adopt zoning regulations or laws.
Yeah, they're two separate, and
Yeah.
even though it's under the heading of zoning.
To be clear, though, that this does not limit the commission's power to impose conditions on an application that are more restrictive than the applicable regulations. And that's clearly outlined in the paragraph that, and it's in our existing ordinance, that we may apply conditions that are more restrictive. As stipulation, the city agencies will assist and furnish the commission with permits, plans, reports, maps, and statistical and other information which the commission may require for its work. Basically, any information that we need, the city agencies will work with us to get that information. Again, and that was part of the model law. Criteria for and designation of landmarks. The changes in this section expand the criteria for designating landmarks in historic districts. It also expands the type of resources, which I discussed at the beginning. Scenic resources, interior resources. And it also, our current designation procedures has individual and historic districts clumped into one paragraph. This distinguishes that there's a difference between how we evaluate an individual landmark versus how we evaluate the significance of a historic district. Sort of more clearly defines that criteria of evaluation. This adopts clear language to describe criteria by which we make our decisions. So that's summed up in the previous slide. So our first certificate of appropriateness application procedure, the stuff that we ask for that's noted in our existing ordinance, has photographs if necessary. We always need photographs. For Irish Cultural Center, we needed a visibility study in order to understand the volume and massing that would impact the historic district. So this adds that to it. These additional pieces of information that we need. It also stipulates, gives us authority to approve ordinary maintenance or in-kind replacement without a public hearing. Was originally intended for a staff level. We don't have staff. So, I mean, this is something that would need to be discussed about the ability, if this is legal. Can a member of the commission who, an executive member, vice chair, or chair, confer with each other and decide that a certain application does not need to go before for a public hearing, that we can simply say, yes, this is in kind?
I presume we would have to formally announce such a procedure. Another possibility would be the city, we delegate that responsibility to a city employee that would be willing to take on that particular role. Someone in the building department or engineering department or whatever department would be appropriate, would be another way. And again, since it isn't in our ordinance, we would have to make it part of our rules and enact it as a body.
This serves to expedite applications that just ordinary maintenance, so that they don't get tied up in this whole bureaucratic dance that we do for applications, that we can move some stuff on its way quickly.
An example today might be the chimneys on Hunter Street. Would bypass us entirely with a staff like this.
Were we denied a clerk? Were we denied a clerk?
We haven't gotten one yet, and I begged.
So we're just operating based on the situation now, not that we're always going to be operating in this way. We might
I
have staff.
have reached out, I have spoken to members of the Laws and Rules Committee about the process for a budget request to hire a part-time clerk to manage preservation applications, public interface, the needs of the commission. And they said that I need to meet with Suzanne Cahill. It would be, I guess they were already assuming that, oh, it will be part of planning, eventually be part of planning. So you need to speak with her and discuss with her possibility of getting a budget request. I've since reached out to Suzanne a couple of times. I was hoping that Kevin and I could sit down and meet with her to discuss the possibility of making an appeal for a staff position to manage landmarks and possibly also heritage area together. I know everybody's overworked. I have not heard back from Suzanne yet. Public notice requirements for certificate of appropriateness. Draft ordinance stipulates that upon submission of a complete application for a certificate, public notice of the proposal shall be posted on the property for a minimum of 10 days before the public hearing. This would also serve to impress upon applicants that they need to come to us after they submit their application. It also gives the public who don't generally go on our city website every month and see, oh, I wonder what is on the agenda this month. The neighbors who are seeing, oh, that this is going before the Landmarks Commission this month, on this date, I will be there. It's just a way of letting the public know we're going to be discussing this at our public meetings. And I think it's required by the Zoning Board of Appeals already.
How would we make sure
So I would say when a application has been deemed complete by the clerk, they would hand the applicant back a little notice that they can put up on their yard or on their property, on their window.
or that would be just part of the application
Yeah,
packet?
part that goes back to them.
Okay.
That, the hearing date will be on this date. And any materials that the public would like to see, they can go down to building safety or wherever the clerk is located and look through the building materials, the application materials, sorry. It's all proposals, it's nothing set in stone. As I said before, this proposes to extend the approval lifespan from 12 months to 24 months. 24 months is standard for other municipalities. We all know that it can take longer than what we think to get a project off the ground and going, and there can be delays. So this is after 24 months, an applicant can apply for an extension if it's 3 months before the expiration. If it's, they get to the 24-month mark, and then they say, oh, I want an extension, they have to reapply. So it's work on
Get them
that.
here earlier.
Yeah. Hardship process and criteria, this is just as recommended in the model law of 2014. It just stipulates a much more defined process for declaring hardship and procedure for applying for that. Affirmative maintenance and repair requirement. Currently, we have demolition-minded neglect. Affirmative maintenance is a little bit more positive. You can do this. It also adds a clause that nothing in the ordinance shall be construed to prevent ordinary maintenance. That an applicant cannot say, oh, I have to come to the landmarks commission. Like, no, there's nothing preventing you from doing this. It also identifies interior conditions that may impact the exterior. That while we only regulate the exterior, there are certain aspects, let's say chimney, water gets into the chimney, and that affects the interior structure of the house. That will also affect eventually the exterior of the house. So it just stipulates those conditions, and also stipulates a specific building code used by the building inspector, the property maintenance code of New York State, Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code. I think they already use that, but this just puts it clearly in the ordinance, so if the public wants to know what that is, they know where to look.
I'm just wondering how that would be known, if it's something in the interior.
It's not necessarily known. We don't inspect that per se, but it's a way of educating the public, saying these conditions can lead to detrimental conditions of the exterior.
Okay.
And if a building inspector is going through a building and they know something that's in the interior, it can be reported. And we can say, yes, this is the interior condition, but this interior condition may impact the exterior. I mean, obviously no building owner wants a condition to be that bad. It's just a way of us to spell it out. Enforcement and violation penalties. This is recommended by the model law 2014. I'm just going to let that section stand. Honestly, we will need to work with the Corporation Council to figure out, is that doable for us or not. Appeals. So this is, as I stated at the beginning, it points to the Zoning Board of Appeals as our appeal body for decision. But importantly, it also stipulates that any appeal review shall be based on the same record and criteria used by our commission. They cannot introduce new information, and they cannot use their own criteria. They must use have the same information, the same criteria used by the Landmarks Commission that we use to make our decision. And this is recommended by the model law. And then the definition section is greatly expanded, and it's moved to the back because it's more for reference. There's no need to take up information at the front of our ordinance for that. And that's it. That's the end. So one thing that's not in the ordinance per se, but it's tacked on to on the last page, on page 29, there's a paragraph. And again, I must stress this is something that needs to be discussed with Corporation Council, with council members, that this is a possibility. But acknowledging that we do not have the staff or the resources to designate a large number of additional properties that have been flagged by other groups and other people as significant in our community, that this might be a way of at least identifying potential new landmarks in historic district, and as a, figuring out a way to address, how do we get to designating those as well. I cannot tell you when the last landmark was designated, but it's been quite a while. So we got a lot of catch up. So this might be one way of getting caught up on that. Okay. I just threw a bunch of information at you. I guess the next approach, I would ask everybody to read it. We'll put it on the agenda for next month. and talk more specifics.
Yeah, and I think we should, if we have specific comments, try to get them on email.
Can we do that? Share comments? Or can it only be done?
What I would like, all right, all these years I've always thought, okay, send it to Lori and she can distribute it, but we can't do that anymore, right?
Can do it, you're just risking, you know.
An open meetings violation. I would risk
You're
it.
not taking action, so I'm not really concerned about an open meetings violation resulting in any sanction. What our office is more concerned about is you will open your personal email to discovery demands in the event somebody challenges any, action or, determination by the commission. I mean, you
One
always-
thing that we had discussed
I
was.
mean, you don't have city email accounts that are, that are public, okay?
So do other board members have city email accounts?
No,
But they have staff that can
yes.
serve this.
Couldn't we, just as a rule, start a new personal account that is not our
Yeah, you can go, you can get,
personal account
you
and
can
just,
open separate Google accounts that, are free, that, you can just, proceed with the understanding that anything on that account is, open to a FOIA request. I mean,
That only.
no one's asking for it. I mean, it's not like
Right.
people are knocking down the door filing FOIA requests for your personal emails.
no, but it could happen, and so
Absolutely.
we should know that
Right.
that can happen at
You
their
know, and
personal
you
accounts.
don't want, your personal information, being subject to, some, deposition or some discovery demand in a lawsuit.
Okay.
Kind of tricky, but we're going to have to let each other know what those accounts are.
We can just, I'm sure we could do that in an open meeting.
Yes. So that seemed rational, a little convoluted, but rational.
Well, on a positive note, when I read it over, and I read it really quickly, but it seemed like there was more of an educational component that I thought was very nice, because it's, it was sort of like inclusive of the applicant, even sometimes before they come to the formal meeting, if they just need some advice on something, and I like that part of it.
It's definitely the aim is comprehension. It's to make it the public, make it easier for the public to understand what we're reviewing, what we're looking for, and how we are arriving at our decisions. And I felt like that was really lacking in our, it is really lacking in our existing ordinance. We struggled with the decision for Irish Cultural Center because the language didn't make a whole lot of sense. The criteria didn't build on itself. So this corrects that. It's still, the criteria is mostly the same. It's national standard criteria. It's just the way it's phrased. It's clearer.
And I think it's especially useful that we build in, and follow as much as possible, the model law. I think there will be tests of the language we're using now in other cities.
And to be clear, our old ordinance is, it's 1980s model law. Parts of it, not all of it, but.
Yeah, parts of it are
So,
just made
I
up.
have to be specific. It's the 2014 model law, not the, and I actually have a whole draft of the 1980s model law from the Department of State. So if anyone's interested in seeing what that is, I can share that.
Now that, I think this is a giant move in the right direction in that regard, and I think it will serve us well because other municipalities are also moving in this direction pretty steadily around the state, is what I'm hearing.
Well, they've already moved there.
Yeah. And those that haven't are considering it. So, thank you. Thank
Well,
you.
you all have to
Thank you.
recognize that this is a legislative determination. It's in front of the council at this point, and before you put in the kind of effort that you're talking about, you should just confirm that the legislature isn't going to act, within the scope of their authority, while you're doing this work, and
The laws and members of the Laws and Rules Committee urged me to do this, so
What I'm telling you is
Listen,
that,
listen to what he's saying.
what I'm telling you is that there is legislation that is currently in front of the legislative body that is charged with, with addressing this issue. And before you put in the effort to go down this path to deliberate on what you think the legislation is, recognize the fact that it's not your decision, it's their decision.
I understand.
And, they, may take action while you're doing this, that you're gonna find insulting.
So do we need to, what's the best way to coordinate? Our contact is still Ms. Shaw, I'm
It will be
understanding.
discussed at the next Laws and Rules meeting.
Well, it's not on the agenda.
Can I
So-
send you the corrections from the?
Yeah.
It's
Because
it's
I
currently
just, like,
not on
wrote
the
them down
agenda,
in a note.
and
Okay, I don't understand why it's not on the agenda, because I was told by them that it is on the agenda. Bill Perry said it was on the agenda, so I don't know what's going
Yeah,
on.
this is a surprise.
Even so, I think if what we're saying is model law is the direction we want to go, if we're willing to put the time in, it would be better to have something for them to be looking at versus no response. So I think it's noted that things could happen and we could be going down a path, but I think we're willing to go down that path if it means that we could be also giving an alternative that is model law 2015.
Yeah.
Can I make an announcement?
Mhm.
Months ago, we were talking a lot about the scanning of the maps that I'm doing. I believe it was you, Marissa, who found the website where there was a slider. Was it you, Leslie? What city was that?
It's Rochester. They're
Okay.
working, it's their own GIS department in Rochester.
I was looking for that and I couldn't find it. So I found Boston also has it. It's called Map Junction, and the person who developed it, Bill Warner, I spoke to him. He said we can use it and we don't have to pay for it. It's really ideal, and all that we have to do is create the maps and send them to him, and he will look them up. We could put Kingston in here and it will open up our municipality, so it's already existing technology.
Wow.
So all we have to do is get the maps ready, which I will do.
Would it take will it open up the ARC files from the NRI project?
I don't know.
So,
Because then you just have to import it if it will, and it's fine, except for a couple of corrections
Yeah,
that need to be made.
it's just a matter of weaving them together and stuff.
One thing to think about is, I mean, what's ideal about Rochester is that it's their own city government who is maintaining the record of where those resources are.
Yeah, this is Boston University or MIT or something. Bill Warner is the guy who developed it back decades ago, and he's also running it now.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is that it's the city of Rochester who is doing this and making it available as a layer, I think, in their GIS application. And that would be ideal as opposed to having a sort of second resource inventory that is not.
I agree, but
Yeah.
this one is available to us. He said we can use it, so we don't have to pay anything for it.
Right, and once it is up, running, existing, and people start noticing its
They're gonna-
benefits, then it's an easier pitch to the city
That's
to
right.
bring it in-house or
Right.
to link
I just don't
somehow.
know what the legality of sharing these images are. I know that some of them that I've gotten off of the Library of Congress, I'm sure we can put on. I don't know about the others, so if somebody can find out that for us.
Ooh, copyright is usually the big key on that, but the city may be the owner of the copyright. The problem would be,
I
I'm
already
trying,
spoke to
like the
Suzanne Baker
Sanborn
about it.
maps. I mean, they
Camera
are,
maps cannot be used.
yeah,
The Sanborn maps can't be used.
Cardwise maps are owned by the city. The Beers map, I don't think has an we have to check on that, but I think the Beers map doesn't have a
Everything's on
copyright.
the map.
Yeah,
Oh, come
it's public.
yeah, so that's how we would be able to decide whether it can be freely shared or not. Kind of confusing, but that's how that works.
Well, I would just Yeah, I would love to know because I want to get this up as soon as possible so we can look at it and use it.
Yeah, there's so much we want to do, Joey, I just,
What's the name of the program?
Mapjunction.com.
I'll find
And
out.
thank you
Or-
for that.
or-
That's a wonderful contact, and if we can link that properly into what the city is doing, I bet a lot of people will find wonderful ways to use it.
so can we get back to the ordinance? We've noted the map junction thing, so next steps, we'll wait to see what Common Council decides to do with the current legislation before them for finding landmarks. We can keep moving forward. I don't think it's a waste of anybody's time to get to know how the ordinance can be stronger and better. What you have, and let's put it back on the agenda for our November meeting for discussion.
In the meantime, should I be reaching out to Ms. Shaw specifically?
To who?
To Andrea Shaw, I believe.
Kevin and I will be meeting with her and Bill Perry tomorrow to discuss
Okay.
next steps for them. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm surprised to hear that it's not on the agenda. But
It's not.
yeah, so I'll talk to Andrea about that tomorrow.
Okay, that would be a kindness, thank you. All right, any further business before the board? All right, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Who would like to make that? Alan moves to adjourn. Do I have a second? Sorry, Alan. Kevin gets the second on that one. All right, all in favor? Aye.